Ladies and gentlemen, our next guest is without a doubt our very next guest.
Yep.
Put your hands together, please, for Mr. Misha Collins.
Hi! I like that jacket a lot.
Thanks, I like your jacket.
They just did a bunch of E.
Wow.
I did. I'm pretty high.
We just took ecstasy somewhere. Ladies and gentlemen, 50 minutes of Rob and Misha rubbing each other. You're welcome. There he is, Misha Collins, everybody! Excuse me, sorry. Excuse me. That was a near fatal sit down. How is everyone? Very lovely here in Florida. A little bike ride on the beach this morning. Warm. I lost my AirPods. Just one. I got the new AirPods that are like noise canceling, and I was riding my bike and listening to a podcast, and I was like, this is great. And then I was riding, and I was like, why'd that podcast stop? And then I tried to ride back on the beach looking for one lonely sand-covered AirPod. But the gulls have gotten it already. Well... I'm handsome. He said that. Hi. Well, should we just jump right into questions, or should I start with answers? Answers. There's a book? There is a book. There's a book, a cookbook. Yep, that's true. That's not I guess that's a, there is a book. That's an answer, okay. It's a statement? Maybe?
No, I got it. The statement.
There is a book, but that's a book, that's a statement, so. The answer would be, because my children were driving me crazy.
Did the book help?
The book has helped and hindered, I would say both, yeah. I wrote about this recently, but I'll share it. So the kids have developed a sense of ownership in the kitchen. They now feel like they are cooks. And they know what they're doing. And they'll bake cakes. They did a 7-layer cake. And it was hard as rocks. And they seemed unable to discern that this was not the texture that we're accustomed to. They're like, this is great, isn't it? You know, with a chisel. But recently, so speaking of hindering it as well as helping, recently I had been shooting late, and one of the kids had kept Vicky up late, or woke her up in the middle of the night. We were both very tired. And morning, that dreaded period of day had come. And I didn't want to get out of bed, and Vicky didn't want to get out of bed, but the kids were like, we're hungry, can you make us breakfast? And I said, can you make your own breakfast? And they said, but we want waffles. And I said, can you make your own waffles? You know how to do it? You take out the waffle iron, you plug it in, you make your pattern, you can do it, right? And they're like, okay. And Vicky said, scream if anything goes wrong. And then we fell back to sleep, and we, of course, heard screaming. And I ran downstairs, and Mason had the batter, we have a sort of galley kitchen, so on one counter was the plugged-in hot waffle iron, and on the other counter, opposite that, I don't know why not next to each other, but on the other counter, across the kitchen, was the batter. And she had fallen and hurt herself because when she spread the olive oil all over the floor, to make her go faster while she was rollerblading, while she was making the waffles. Sorry, roller skating, I want to get my facts straight. She was roller skating and felt like she could make it go faster if she put olive oil all over the floor. And then that didn't end how she thought it would end. And that's why she was screaming. And that's the kind of thing that as a parent, when you release your children who have confidence, newfound confidence into the kitchen, that's bad. That's a bad thing that happens because of them being confident cooks. They think, I've got this. In fact, I can increase efficiency by putting on my rollerblades, increasing the floor. Roller skates. Thanks for fact checking me. So yeah, so that kind of thing happens, and that's the kind of thing that you as a parent, you're like, okay, they know, they've been told repeatedly, don't touch the hot waffle iron. They know where the mix is. It should work out. But you forget, as a parent, about the olive oil and the roller skates. Looking for eye contact. Hi.
If you could pick one other character to be on the show, who would you be and why?
If I could pick another character to be on the show other than Castiel, I think I might like to play Jack. Because Jack is basically Castiel, but 20 years younger. I think we need to move you to the back of the room. You go sit back there and think about what you just said. Thanks.
So I know you've been touring for the cookbook.
Wait, what happened?
You've been touring with the cookbook.
Uh-huh.
And I was wondering what that's been like and what it's been like touring with Vicky.
What was the first thing you said? No, that's the second thing.
I think I said, hi, Misha.
That's what I was missing. It's been good touring with Vicky. We've done several signings together, and signing for me feels like something I had done before, and it's new to her, and she doesn't really like being in the limelight, and all of the attention makes her a little uncomfortable. But I had to give her some feedback doing the autographs. First of all, I have to say, and please don't tell her I told you this. No, and I'm sure it's not being filmed. So Vicky wrote a book. Her first book was on a different topic. It was not about family cooking. It involved multiple people, but not families. My wife wrote a book called The Threesome Handbook. And it was, I don't know how long ago, but a long time ago. And when she wrote it, I was like, I don't know that this is how I want to be known in the world. is that do you need to put, have you heard of a nom de plume? A pseudonym? Can you use a different name? And she was like, no, it's a point of integrity. I'm going to use my real name. And we had a conversation, and I was like, okay, if it's that important to you, use your real name. I'll forever be marred as a pervert, but now I don't care anymore. I'm like, yeah, you know, hey, yeah. kind of proud. But she, as like the mother of small children who goes to, you know, school functions and is trying to establish herself as, you know, an artist and a cookbook author, she's trying to distance herself from herself. And so she's using the name Vicki Collins as the author of the cookbook. Can't believe I'm revealing all of this. I think this was a family secret.
We won't tell.
I know you'll keep this between us. So anyway, she's going by Vicki Collins. And I'm Smo. So I told you Smo. But she also has no history of signing the name Vicki Collins. And so we sat down at our first signing, and she was like, "Oh shit, I don't have a signature. I'm signing, but I've never signed this name before." Which, by the way, my legal name is Dmitry Krushnik, and when I was signing things, you know, in my earlier life, I was always signing, you know, like credit card receipts with that name. So I had a signature for that name. But when I came to my first convention, I was like, "Oh, I don't have a signature for this other name." But people did not want me to sign Dmitry Krushnik. So there was a little learning curve on my signature, and if you have like one of my first autographs from one of the first conventions, it looks like a 6-year-old was just like, trying to learn how to write in cursive for the first time. Anyway, I told her I don't think she has a very good signature. Just I had to be, you know, honest about it. And then I had to also give her some feedback because people were coming up in the line. You know, people would wait it outside, potentially in a couple of spots, like in the cold, for an hour or more. And she, as they were coming up through the line, she was like looking at them and making eye contact and listening to what they said to her and responding and being genuinely like sweet and connected. And I was like, hey, you can't do that shit. That's not the kind of operation we're running here. They're going to walk away from this table feeling like human beings. Anyway, I'm still working on her about that. But it's been frustrating.
Hi. I was just wondering if you remember something funny
No.
that you...
Sadly.
Okay, I don't either. But just something funny you remember saying or doing when you were a kid?
Oh! Something funny I remember doing. Well, I have more than one memory of my childhood, believe it or not. One thing I remember is, I remember having broken something and then telling all of the grown-ups, I must have been 4, that the elves had done it. And I distinctly remember believing it. Like lying was something that was so, it was so different then. Because I could, if I said it, I believed it. Now, unfortunately, I know that I'm lying when I'm lying. And it makes your delivery much less believable. But I believed it so fervently that I think that I convinced the adults that the elves had done it too. I remember we lived on a river, and we had a dog that liked to fetch sticks named Bear. And we'd throw sticks into the river, he'd run out, grab the stick, and bring it back. And he loved it, and we loved it. We'd do that for hours. And I was probably, this is right around probably 4 years old too. And I threw the stick in the river, and Bear jumped into the water, went out, grabbed the stick, and then as he re-emerged on the shore, he morphed into a giant Big Bird from Sesame Street. But he was a black lab, so this Big Bird was a giant black Big Bird too. And I was scared to death because my dog had just turned into Big Bird. And I was terrified, like my mom used to make me go feed the dog downstairs, and I was like, I don't want to go feed the dog, because I never knew, like, is he going to turn into Big Bird again? He eventually turned back into Bear, not when I was watching him, and another, but like the next day I was like, oh, he's a dog again, but I was always on edge, like, is he going to turn into Big Bird again? And then, I think I was probably 8, and I was telling some of my new classmates, like, yeah, my dog sometimes turns into Big Bird. And as I said it, I was like, something's weird about that story. And then I finally figured out, literally after having told all the kids I knew for years that this had happened, that I had dreamed it, and believed the dream to be real, and also like wondered in my early childhood why I'd made no friends. For some reason, I've been reflecting on I guess, writing a cookbook and thinking about, and having little kids, but I've been reflecting on my own childhood a fair amount lately, and I noticed this weird thing. This is so boring to convey, but that I feel like I had the same mind when I was 6 years old as I do now, like the same inner monologue and the same kind of reflection. Like that same voice feels consistent throughout my life. And I remember, I just remember the way I was like thinking about things feels very similar to the way, like I haven't evolved at all. But it's funny because I have these very sort of almost grown-up sounding thoughts, like about my place in the world and things like that when I was in 2nd grade. And at the same time, I was, thinking much like I think now, but at the same time I was also like, when another kid was at the drinking fountain, I'd slam his face down into it. And I've lost that, and I'm sad about that. But I can't reconcile the fact that I was having like these very sort of contemplative thoughts, but I was also like trying to knock people's teeth out at the same time. But that I was straying a bit from your question, and I apologize. Hi.
Hi. So I got a 2-part question. I
Okay.
guess aside from your cookbook, what's your favorite book, and like what genre do you lean towards?
What genre do I lean toward?
Yeah, like comedy. I don't know.
Comedy.
Drama. Documentary.
What are my other choices? Did you just say documentary? Is that a type of book? I feel like I'm behind the times. I don't know what the kids are reading these days. I love reading soap operas. And yeah, I have a few books that I have like been saying are my favorite books for a while now, and I feel like I need to refresh. There's a book that I really loved that I read several years ago called Annals of the Former World by John McPhee. I don't recommend anyone else read it. You read it? Yes. Oh yes, yes. I recognize you now. It's a tome. It's a tiny print. It's 600, very large, very small print. It's not big print. And it's about geology. So it's a real page turner, people. The reason I like that book is because I used to have this thing when I would get sad, like when I was in high school or something, and feel like things weren't going well. If I looked at the stars, it made me think of how infinitesimally small I am and insignificant, and somehow that was a source of comfort to me. Like knowing how small I am in the universe, then I could feel like my problems had to also be proportionately pretty small. And then reading that book, it's really largely about time and the vast expanse of time that came before us. If you stretch out your arms like this, and then you do a single medium pressure stroke with a nail file on the tip of one of your fingernails, that represents, if this is the history of the Earth and the timeline, that stroke is all of human existence. Like the amount of material that is taken off of your fingernail is all of human existence. So that weirdly also makes me feel good. So I took comfort in this book of geology. And then there's another book that I recommended to Jared to read. He's like, so it's a good book to read. And I said, oh, you should read The Life and Times of Michael Kay. As I found it incredibly uplifting. And it's about this, it's by this South African writer, Coetzee, who writes about a man who's deeply, deeply impoverished, who has nothing and is forced out of the city, and he ends up wandering off into the bush and living in a crack between rocks with just a few pumpkin seeds that he desperately hopes will one day grow into a pumpkin. And then ultimately soldiers come and destroy the pumpkins. And I found this incredibly uplifting. Because like somehow through this, he still maintained a shred of humanity and happiness. And so to me, through the lens of my pathologically optimistic mind, I saw like this was an uplifting story. Jared read it and he was like, it's the most depressing thing I've ever heard. So there are a couple of recommendations. Another book that I just read that's also good is Educated by Tara Westover. It's amazing. It's a memoir about a woman who's kept cloistered by her very religious zealot family, and she's not allowed to go to school, not allowed to watch TV. She ends up like getting herself to college, but she's never been to school, and she goes. And in one of her first classes, they're talking about, it's a history class, and they're talking about the Holocaust, and she's like, what's the Holocaust? And everyone thought that she was like, somebody like a Holocaust denier, and that she was trying to act like it never happened, but she literally had been so isolated that she'd never heard of it before, and she was genuinely curious, like, what is this thing that you're talking about? Anyway, it's a really interesting memoir, very well written. So, I'm on a weird, like, you wind me up and I just don't stop talking. And I can tell you're all bored and I'm still talking. Sorry. Hi.
All right, so you know that we like you, but we adore Vicky.
That's because she's undermining me at the autograph line.
What does she...
I kept having to look over and say, don't fucking look at them in the eye. Making me look bad.
How does she feel about all of the love that has been shown to her?
The love that's shown to her? Oh, God. Nothing makes her more uncomfortable. People will come up to the table when we're signing and say something complimentary to her, and you can just see her like wilting inside. She's like, oh God, stop it. I relish those moments. Good talk. Hi.
My question is, if you could go back in time to when you went in for your audition for Supernatural, what would you tell yourself about your experience that you had?
If I could go back in time, I would say, well, one thing I would tell myself is that this is going to go on for nearly forever. You'll be an old, weathered, wrinkled man when you're done with the show. So try to pace yourself. I think part of what happened with me on Supernatural was I got into like a make hay while the sun shines mentality. Like, oh, I'm on the show, people are watching. I gotta, start a nonprofit and do all these other things and like squeeze everything in because who knows when it's gonna be gone. The truth is, it never. Like, oh my God, this has been going on forever. So that's one thing. I would say brace yourself. Something terrible is going to happen in 2016. I would say, I guess there's one more thing that I would say. I think that I maybe squandered a little bit of time. I would love to have known that this was going to be a long run and not spend time like thinking about, oh, where's this going? What's going to happen? Because I think if I could have just like relaxed into embracing that early on, it would have been more joyful and productive overall. And I probably would have said, you need to train yourself to not respond when someone touches your groin. Because if I had taken that away from Jared early on, he would have lost his power over me. We have, so the camera on set, the camera's quite large, and there's something called a camera dolly, which is basically like a cart that the camera can mount to, and the camera operator can sit on, and then the dolly operator pushes the camera in a scene when the camera has movement. And our dolly operator, his name is Dave, he came up to me one day and he was like, Misha, there's something I've been meaning to talk to you about. I said, okay. And he was very serious, and it sounded like maybe I had done something horrible. He said, this is a trick that I learned a long time ago, but when you're trying not to laugh, you should try to imagine, think about how much you hate the other people who are trying to make you laugh. And so, if you watch any given episode of Supernatural, what you will see is, what it appears to be is Castiel interacting with Sam and Dean in a scene, but really what you're seeing is Misha thinking, I hate you, Jensen. I hate you. In a desperate effort not to laugh when my balls are being fondled.
Hi, Misha.
Hi.
So when we first meet Cass, he's very much a soldier on a mission. He's evolved a lot over time, and then in season 14, briefly, we got to see a version of Cass who I believe didn't even know who Sam and Dean were. In the 300th episode, Lebanon, and he comes back with Zachariah. So I wanted to know what it was.
Thank you for filling that in. Totally wrong.
I did a little research before I asked the question. But I wanted to know what it was like getting to play that version of Cass who was more like the original Cass.
Well, Cass, there wasn't a lot of Cass in that episode, so I didn't get to really dig into the character much, but it was kind of an interesting exercise for me because I remember very distinctly, like, I was like, what the hell was Cass like back then? And it kind of came back, you know, except for I look 15 years older, but but yeah, there were certain, and it's not funny because it's something that I just haven't thought about a lot, you know, like what was the original Cass like compared to the Cass as he, you know, compared to Cass as he presents now. But, you know, there were just little things. He was much more robotic and obedient and much angrier. He's got much more contemplative as time has gone on. He doesn't head tilt quite as much. And he doesn't fight as well as he used to. It's true, isn't it? Yeah. It was good.
Hi, Misha. I was wondering if you, Misha, were to ever meet Castiel, how do you think that interaction would go?
I think it would go remarkably well. I think it would go a lot like this. Like, Oh, you're very handsome. You're very handsome as well, thank you. And that kind of thing. Yeah, I would say, ah, you look taller in person. That's been a great source of frustration to me over the years, since we're bearing it all today. Normally in television, I remember when I was working on Charmed, and I was a child, but I was working with Alyssa Milano and Shannon Doherty, and the director kept telling me to stand up because when I was talking to them, I was like bending down to their level to talk to them because I was a giant compared to them. I mean, people in television tend to be really small. And then I got onto the set of Supernatural, and you know, they early on both had extensions to their light phones, surgically implanted. And I have to go like this when I'm talking, and for some reason I distinctly remember, like in season 4 and 5, it seemed like whenever we were like outside or something and on a hill, it would be like, okay, Jared, you stand here, and Misha, you stand down there. And I'd be like, I felt like I was always like trying to act from the bottom of a well. And yeah, so it's been strange being on Supernatural for that reason. But whenever I come to conventions and people come up to the photos and they're like, oh, they see that I'm not everyone watching television, obviously, thinks I'm a dwarf. And then they're like, oh, you're normal height. It's really weird.
Hi. Oh.
Sorry, that was unceremonious. Goodbye. And that was rude of me, I apologize. Hello.
It's okay.
Did you lose your train of thought when I interrupted you?
Yeah, okay. So we know that Dean and Cass are like separated, or they're like mad at each other right now. And
it's a trial separator.
So I was just wondering if you ever think that Cass, or no,
You're doing, I was going to say you're doing great. You're not doing great, but I don't want to give false encouragement, but you are doing this. I would say that. It's moving forward. You started, and some of the question has come out, and that's an achievement. We can celebrate, let's celebrate that victory. And who knows, we might even get more of the question.
I'm wondering
Yes.
if you ever think that Dean and Cass are gonna have that profound bond that they had when Cass first started on the show.
You mean, are they going to get back together?
I didn't say that.
What are you getting at?
I'm asking if they will ever have the profound bond.
Is that a euphemism?
No.
Are you...
You know what I'm talking about.
What's that?
You know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about? Oh, so it's innuendo. What do you think?
What do I think?
Yeah.
I think Dean's been too mean, so I don't think Cass should, you know, have that profound bond again.
So you think Cass should ice him out a little bit? Play hard again?
Yes.
Yeah, you said it, not me. Actually, technically I said it. You know, to be perfectly honest with you, I think there will be, between the two of them, some bondage. In so much trouble. Shame on you, I can't believe you brought that up.
It's your safe word.
Impala. Actually, it's a safe phrase. Get out of my trunk. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. These people were...
Hi.
Hi.
Of all the 11 years that Castiel has been on the show, what do you think his most defining moment has been?
It's 12. What was his biggest moment? Defining moment? Well, not bad. I think it's probably when Cass became human and tried to eat a tube of toothpaste. I think that encapsulates the character perfectly. I can't think of a better example. Someone yelled up front, I was contemplating taking credit for it, but other people might have heard it and then they didn't. So I'm going to give you credit, sir. He said, "Hey, ass butt." That actually might be Cass's defining moment, because what it shows is like he's a team player. He's out, he's out to fight the good fight, and he is a warrior, and he's just a little off. Like, ass butt is not something that people say to each other when they're trying to insult them. It's just a little off. It was perfect for Cass. Yeah. Anyone else, and everyone would have been like, "Oh, dude, you're killing the heroic moment here." And everyone's like, "Yeah, that's Cass. Sorry." I remember when I was a kid, I was at a new school, and I was getting picked on, bullied by this kid named Jake, and we were playing dodgeball, and another kid held my arms, and Jake threw the ball into my face, and then everyone was laughing at me, and then I was crying, and I was 9, and I stood up and I said, "Drop dead, you, Jake, you." It was so awful. I just couldn't think of an insult. And I feel like that's Cass. He's like, "Hey, ass butt." Anyway, hi.
Hello. I have a question for a friend who couldn't be here.
Sure.
And he wants to know, why is Cass ignoring Sam when he and Dean are the ones who are like fighting?
Whoa. We're getting into the whole triangle. I think he knows that they're together. It's that Sam and Dean are, I don't know. No idea. Writer forgot that who he was fighting with? Probably. Writers mix up the brothers all the time. It's like they can interchange their dialogue, I think that most of the scripts might be generated by robots now anyway. I'm just kidding, dear writers and producers. I know that's not the case. Good question. Very, very probing. Why did you ask that? Or why did your friend want to know that?
I think because he really likes Sam and he doesn't want you to be mad at him.
Oh, well, that's sweet. That's a really good reason. I appreciate that. I'm not neither, well, okay. I'm not, sorry. Castiel is not mad at Sam. Share it, another story. Okay. Thanks for asking that. I don't have a satisfactory answer for you, but that's what you get. Sorry. Hi.
Hey, Misha. So people have asked before, like, what you think your ending for your character could be, and I think people have given, like, realistic canon-type answers, but now with, like, this theme of, like, godly writer influence, what do you think would be an ultimate happy ending for Cass?
It's so hard for me to take the high road. Okay, so what would be the ultimate happy ending for Cass?
A happy, everybody wins, you know, like, everybody wins, everybody lives kind of an ending, or what would be the worst case scenario ending? Well, actually both. Happy ending, and what would be the worst case scenario ending?
Okay, well, worst case scenario is no happy ending. But you thought you were getting a happy ending. I've never felt more juvenile. I think that, I actually think that a happy ending where everybody just feels like, oh, that was great, there was, full release. I feel like that would be great, and the audience could be like, that was $20 well spent. Sorry, 20 episodes well watched, and I think that we know, this is hard for me to answer because we know what the last scene of Supernatural is going to be. And because you all have been so nice, I'll tell you exactly what it is. Show of hands, who actually would like me to tell you what is wrong with you? Like, who wants to know how the series ends before you watch? Shame on you. But I have to say, I actually really am happy knowing that I know the ending. It's kind of cool because we're working towards something and we know what it is that we're working for. And the end of the show is going to be both a happy ending and a sad ending. It's going to be, I think, kind of a combination of those two endings that you're looking for, and it's going to be, I think it's going to be satisfying. It's just, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit here. It'll be, yeah, it'll make some people cry. You've been crying already? Well, this will be one of those crying moments. But it'll also have, by the way, I wasn't expecting it, and when I saw what this, or I heard what the final scene is going to be, I was like, oh, that's actually happier than I thought it would be. And yet there's but you will be crying too. Happy and sad at the same time. How's that? Was that okay for everybody? Not really at all spoilery, just talking about happy and sad. Thank you. Oh, hi.
Hi. Supernatural has become such a source of strength and inspiration and comfort for so many people. What advice do you have for the fandom to help us begin to emotionally cope with the show coming to an end?
Yeah, I don't have any, sorry. All right, I'll give some advice. I think that one of the, so yes, this show, for multitudinous reasons, this show has become a source of inspiration and support for a lot of the members of the fandom. And I'm trying to talk. And part of that is that this show deals with deep mythological storylines that resonate with everyone, and serve as, you know, there's a reason that humans tell stories. It's to inspire and instruct new generations and to pass on, you know, pass on the culture that is important to us, right? And so the mythology embedded within Supernatural is something that inspires people. I was talking to someone earlier today who said that she joined the military because Supernatural had inspired her to want to be of service in the biggest way she could. And I thought that was really beautiful. And it's easy for us to go to work and sort of punch the clock and forget that that's a part of what's going on here, and that's important. I think also the fact that the show has been on for so long and the audience has gotten to watch Sam and Dean go from being boys to being decrepit old men. Also, weirdly, makes them feel like a part, that makes Sam and Dean feel like a part of the audience's family. You've watched these guys grow up, and so there's going to be some real mourning when they're gone, just like you would mourn someone you've known for 15 years, who is dead and gone. But there's another aspect, I think, to why Supernatural has been a source of strength and inspiration to fans, and that's that this community that has coalesced around the show has been incredibly supportive. Like, people find support in one another. I've heard so many stories about Supernatural fans reaching out and supporting people who are in the fandom who are having a hard time, and being a source of comfort and community to one another. And I would say, like, keep doing that. This community doesn't have to go away just because the show goes away. You guys can form profound bonds amongst one another that transcends the end of the show and carries on into the future. Just don't cheat on us with other shows, is all we ask. Yeah.
Hi, Misha.
Hi.
So one of my favorite cast storylines was his relationship with Claire.
Wait, relationship with what?
Claire. And since those episodes, she's taken on her own life in the show, but we haven't actually seen Cass with Claire at all. So my question, sorry, I can't, it's a little high up. My question is, do you think they still maintain any kind of relationship? And given it's the last season, they're shelling out all the money to bring everybody back. Do you think...
Sorry, I'm now swiping at phantom objects in the air. Are you asking if we could ever conceivably afford Catherine Newton again?
Well, yes, and what...
No. She's too much of a movie star now. I mean, it would be awesome to have Catherine back and see Claire again. I don't know. I've only seen scripts up through 14. So I don't know whether we will see her again or whether that's something that's under discussion. I will tell you that the character of Claire is something, we're talking about Claire again soon. And she is folded into the storyline, although not on screen. And that's all I'm going to tell you. I probably shouldn't have told you that. Forget that I said that.
Say what?
Thank you. Oh, you're back in my good graces. Oh, I'm sorry, you're not. Somebody else is. Hi.
Hi, okay, so my question is on behalf of my friend, what is the most significant moment in your life?
I'd probably say conception. I really feel like everything unfolded from that point. Thank you. Hi.
Hi, Misha. So I was wondering, I was super stoked when your cookbook came out because I love to bake and I love to cook, I love to clean the kitchen. So what's your favorite recipe out of the cookbook and what would you think would be a good recipe to start with?
What is my favorite recipe? Well, I should have a ready answer for that question. I have always been somebody who takes great comfort in breakfast foods for some reason. Like when I had a lot of time on my hands and I wasn't working, I would always go to diners for breakfast. That was just like my happy place. And my favorite breakfast item is the egg and cheese sandwich, which I have to say, I think I probably make the best egg and cheese sandwich you will ever meet. But we modified the egg and cheese sandwich to, challenge accepted? Who said it? What's so great about your egg and cheese sandwich? Throw down. We have egg and cheese muffins. So the kids, like we use muffin tins and then we cut little rounds and the kids can make these like little egg and cheese muffins and then bake them in the oven and they come out great and they're cute and fun and the kids love making them. So that's probably one of my favorite recipes in the cookbook. There's another one that was that is shepherd's pie. For some reason when I was sick and I was a kid and I wanted something comforting, I would always ask for shepherd's pie. And so I guess that one just has like a sense memory soft spot in my heart. And then there's another recipe. So the cookbook has, basically it's designed to encourage kids to become engaged with trying new foods and eating healthy foods, but also it's also designed to help the family bond around the process of cooking and eating. And one of the things that we've done in that process is like sometimes given the kids license to invent new things or take control of the cooking process. And sometimes we'll wake up in the morning and I'll say something like, okay guys, why don't you try to invent a breakfast that nobody else has ever made before? And then they're like, all right, let's do it. And one morning Mason was like, let's do breakfast popsicles. And she was just so like excited about it. And I was like, yes, let's do that. We have orange juice, we have other fruit in the kitchen, let's make breakfast popsicles. And she's like, yes, and we have scrambled eggs and bacon and toast, and all of that went in a blender, and then it went into the freezer in a popsicle mold, and then it unfortunately came out of the freezer. And I had to eat the breakfast popsicle. It was awful. And so that is an example recipe in the cookbook. There are, I think, like 5 of those kind of recipes that are like sort of showing how creativity can run wild. And there's a little caveat, like please don't actually ever cook this. But the kids thought they were delicious. And that was sort of part of the point, was that they'll eat anything if they feel like it's theirs and they're proud of it. But we had an argument about that when we were talking about which recipes to include in the book. And I said, let's go ahead and leave that one out because this is a cookbook and you want people to like food, and that's a recipe that's going to make people never want to eat again. It's vile and it's definitely not appetizing. But Vicky was like, no, we should really include it. And then we said, and so once again, she won the argument. We sent the draft off to the publisher called, love the recipes. One thing, this breakfast popsicle business, I think it's a little too disgusting. Are you guys okay to take it out? And I was like, yes we are. And then the publisher called back the next week and was like, I just can't shake it. I've been thinking about the breakfast popsicles all week, and I feel like it really illustrates the point that if kids, take ownership of a recipe, that they'll eat anything, and I think we should put it back in. And Vicky was like, told you. And so it's in there, but it's also, it's a recipe that has driven a wedge in my marriage. Okay.
Hi, Misha. Well, my original question was taken and you answered it, so. That's
What was it?
What your favorite was, because I just purchased the cookbook and I wanted to know, because I don't,
Oh, okay.
I'm anxious to go home and make
I answered it and then I went on a tangent.
But I have a new one.
Okay.
With all the recipes, besides the creations of your kids coming up with new inventions to put in there, what kinds of recipes are they? Were they ones that you guys like, that are handed down from family, or between the two families, yours and Vicky's, or what?
We don't like any of the stuff in the cookbook. No. And all the recipes are just stolen from other cookbooks. So what we did is we sat down, we got a bunch of cookbooks, and we sat down at the table and we flipped through, and we're like, oh, that doesn't look very good. Let's put that in our book. And we were actually just tearing pages out of other cookbooks until the stack of pages was about the height of a cookbook. And then we, hand wrote it so it looked like it was done by us on other paper, and then mailed it into Harper's. And they said, well, okay. That's what the process of writing the cookbook was. Is that helpful?
Makes me really excited that I just purchased it.
Do you like any of the stuff? Like, is it something that's good or gross? Like, what is that? It is, I guess, in fairness, it really is a mashup of good and gross. But you read it and you tell me what you think, and we can discuss it further later. Okay? Okay. Thanks.
Hi, Misha.
Sorry, that just brought up another story. Sorry. So there's a passage in the book that's about one of the things the book is trying to do is help parents ingratiate their kids to new foods and explore the panoply of different options of food there are out in the world. And there's a story about a parent sort of scrunching her face up at dried seaweed that her daughter was about to try. And being like, oh, I don't like that. I find it very fishy, the mom said. And then the kid who was about to try this new food was like, ooh, yeah, okay, I'm not going to try that. And so it was in there to illustrate how, like, if we broadcast our own biases about food, then our kids are just going to pick up on them. And the mom who had said that got a copy of the book and immediately identified herself. She's like, she texted Vicky and was like, that was me that you were talking about there, wasn't it? And Vicky was like, oh God, I didn't think that you were going to put it was years ago, and I didn't, it was like this awkward thing. Mom felt terrible, and the mom took her 7-year-old to the grocery store. And the grocery store they were doing a bunch of free samples in the aisles. This was 2 nights ago. And the mom was like, well, I am not going to be that mother anymore. And they had free samples of hazelnuts. And the mom was like, Jane, change the name to protect the innocent. Jane, you want to try this? Whereas previously she would have been like, you don't like those. Gave Jane the hazelnut, and then they had to take Jane by ambulance to the hospital because of the anaphylactic shock that she went into. Jane's okay, we've been talking to them, but she also said, I knew I shouldn't have her try new things. It was really, that whole really backfired. Terrible. We felt terrible. But that doesn't happen often. Okay. Is it your turn? Whose turn is it? Your turn. I'm sorry. Hi.
Hi. So I've got a bit of a random question.
Okay.
So basically, what's your favourite word or phrase?
What's my favorite word or phrase?
Just ones that you sort of, you know, when you use them, you just think, oh, I like that one, or just
Oh, yeah,
like that.
I guess it's a phrase. And it's one that I use on set a lot. Please don't touch me there. Yes.
Since it's the holiday season, and what was a family tradition that you used to celebrate as a kid that you kind of used as something to celebrate with your kids now?
We had a holiday, well, one thing that we've done a fair amount that I really love is going, like on Thanksgiving, we have tried to like go bring food to homeless shelters, or actually go bring like prepared plates of food to homeless people that we can find just around town. We did that when we were in LA all the time. Another holiday tradition in my family was we would make gingerbread villages, and they would have themes over like Christmas and New Year's. And we would get a 4x8 sheet of plywood, and then put topography on it, like hills and lakes and things like that, and then have a theme and like create an entire village around a theme. And like, so one year, like there were railroad tracks that went through, it was a town, and it was like the good side of the tracks and the bad side of the tracks. And we had this was, the year that we did this was in, it was in Santa Cruz, California. And we had like flushing toilets that were gold in like these glass-faced mansions. I mean, we really get into it. And our gingerbread village making skills are pretty awesome. And then on the other side of the tracks, it was like boarded up windows and liquor stores and people sleeping on benches under newspapers, and like someone with a syringe stuck in their arm. Classy stuff, right? And we finished it, and it took up the whole kitchen table. And then we were like, what are we going to do with this? And we were kind of proud of this one. And so Vicky's sister, who was the one that lived in Santa Cruz, was like, you know what? Why don't we would do, like, we would melt candy, different kinds of candies, and chew different things up, and like, you know, like, it was the kind of thing that you don't, like, it was a lot of, like, manipulating with our sweaty hands and to get the right textures that we wanted. Anyway, Monica said, there's a community center nearby, and they have like a display area. I could call them and see if we could set it up in there. We called, they said, yeah, bring it down. So we brought it down, put it in the community center. We went back the next day, and the homeless had come in and eaten the whole thing. So gross. I felt terrible. That was a family tradition, and we do that with our kids too. We're still making gingerbread villages, and it's really fun, but super messy and so time consuming. Yeah. Okay, good talk. Thank you. Hi guys.
Hi, how are you?
Oh shit, hey Misha, I didn't see you there.
This is weird.
Stealthy getting on stage.
Yeah, we're just trying not to get booed. That's really good. So
Well, you know you have them eating out of the palm of your hand when you make the joke about not getting booed and they boo you for it. By the way, just so you know, I don't know, it might be early to announce, but when Rob writes a book about his experience in the convention world, it will be Trying Not to Get Booed, the Rob Benning story. Funding conventions from 2002 to 2022.
And I won't sell a copy. Misha, speaking of selling copies, how's your book going?
I think it's going great.
I saw your post about the billboard. I thought that was really cool.
What's the billboard? What billboard?
Yeah. There's a billboard in LA.
Is there?
Yeah.
Where? Well, narrow it down, Mike.
It's right there. It's
Why, are you gonna drive around? Are you gonna drive around looking for it? Yeah. Just tell me where it is.
No.
Well, that's it.
Yeah. And how are album sales going?
The album, thanks to the support of the lovely people of the Supernatural fandom, the album has done very well, which is lovely. Yesterday we reached number 5 on the iTunes country charts. So that was fabulous.
So awesome.
Yeah. Good.
It's really cool.
Yeah, thanks, man. Well, I mean,
Guys, you're not going to have time for us anymore, are you?
I only am employed by you. I don't know what you're talking about. I literally have no other job but things that involve you. I have no idea what you're talking about. We've literally talked about me after the show as being your valet. I'm not sure, like, is this your way of firing me? It's not weird. How was that, everybody?
It was great. There were a couple of times when I had to course correct to sort of take their minds out of the gutter. But all in all, I think it was pretty good.
Oh, good. Well, listen, we're proud of your fundraising with that book. It's impressive, man. You did great work for a lot of great people. Ladies and gentlemen, Misha.